It's the classic image of a great NFL quarterback. He rears back, spots his target, and fires a perfect spiral. In terms of hitting a bullseye, is the NFL quarterback the world's most precise athlete? When it comes to a spiral, what's more accurate? A football thrown by an NFL Pro Bowl quarterback or an arrow fired by a world-class archer?
A staple of our childhoods has sadly passed away. John Brenkus, creator of one of the best and probably the most creative sports shows ever made, has moved on to his next life. He'd been battling with depression, and it was reported on June 1st, 2025 that John had succumbed to that battle, and tragically, taking his own life. In 2023, it was reported that John was working on a new version of Sports Science, a show even bigger in scope that would take the concept to a whole new level. But unfortunately, we never really heard anything more about it after that point. John Brenkus, like most humans, was always pursuing, always chasing after the next goal. And I can't help but wonder if the new version of the show not really coming to fruition maybe re-triggered the depression that he'd battled with for years. 2 years ago, John had even spoke about another time when he was deeply depressed. And he delivers it with that famous John Brenkus delivery, so it might not have hit most people as heavily as it probably should have at that time. But revisiting it now, you can really start to see just how much he was truly masking it.
Where I counted myself out, I was living in Park City, Utah, and I fell into a very deep depression. I had come off of selling my company, selling Sports Science, ESPN, and you're kind of living in Park City, trying to feeling like you're retiring, and oh my God, I made it. And the isolation that you feel living in a mountain town, the cold weather, injuries, things not going right. I spiraled into a deep, deep depression, and I was flat out suicidal. So much so, I had a noose tied around my neck. I was ready to do it, and my dog, Zeppelin, came to my rescue, literally pulled on my pants, on my jeans, and literally was going crazy, wouldn't leave me alone. And I, in my suicidal funk, was like, what am I doing? I literally picked up my phone, called my mom. I said, there's something wrong with me. I am mentally lost.
But you see what I'm saying? He basically delivers one of the darkest, coldest, saddest stories about a given point in his life with the same delivery as he would a segment on his show. This always scares me for people who deal with depression, that they're still trying to project a certain energy to keep other people smiling. And while this comes from a good place, you can get trapped in it. You see this a lot in people with those outgoing personalities. They can feel the social expectation to entertain others. We've also seen this with several comedians over the years. John's first depression was shortly after he sold his show. And when he doesn't have that big goal to pursue or something to work on, then he would start to get this feeling of emptiness. Recently, I thought a lot about the impermanence of this life and what pursuits are worthwhile during our time here. I believe and have been trying to preach on this channel for years, albeit in slightly different forms, but the core message has always been the same. And that's that our passions, the constructive ones, are gifts given to us by God that we can feel innately, and that we should cherish, develop, share, and use those gifts to, in our own little way, add value to the world. Whether he realized it or not, I believe John Brenkus did that in droves. I think his passion and enthusiasm for finding that sweet spot where sports meets science influenced the paths of many of us who watched this show all those years ago. I just hope he knew that, which is why I made a video about him and his show 2 years ago as basically a tribute. That's me using my gifts, trying to add value back into the world in my little way. You know what I'm saying? That's how this works. Sometimes though, once the height of your popularity wanes, it's easy to get down on yourself and feel you didn't do enough. But the seeds that you sow take years or decades to fully mature and blossom in the sun. Those plants then develop their own seeds and continue to add more beauty into the world. That cycle continues throughout the millennium. Today you'll learn a little more about the story of John Brenkus and the amazing show he created back in the day. Like I alluded to before, a little while back I did a video covering all of those details. A lot of people didn't see it, so I figured we could rewatch or watch it today for the very first time in honor of the now late John Brenkus. A lot of days I don't really feel it, you know what I'm saying, but today I'm feeling it, you know what I'm saying, so I'll do it for John. So let's do it, man. You know what time it is. Chew the wing.
Yeah, you'll never know quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
All the average Joes out there appreciate this because I'm about to get my bell rung.
Let's do this.
Okay, stop. Now you're probably wondering how John got in this position. To answer that, I gotta take you back to the beginning. As a lifelong sports fan, I've seen multiple generations and a bunch of different eras of sports content. You had the Sports Center era where that's all we watched, and almost everything else was just worse versions of that. Now you did have a few alternative sports programs, but those was mostly just geared to the late night crowds. The Best Damn Sports Show period comes to mind, but besides the cheerleaders, I wasn't really that into it. But in 2007, a little show called Sports Science appeared on FSN for the very first time. The show gave you the science behind the best athletes from every sport with what felt like alien technology. And the show helped get rid of that old school notion that one person couldn't like jock stuff and nerd stuff. So this one time they compared an NFL bull rush to a police battering ram to see which was more powerful. And the two testing subjects was a SWAT team captain versus NFL Hall of Fame linebacker Ray Lewis. The experiment called for the SWAT captain to take a police battering ram, same ones they used to bust in your house to confiscate inventory. He used that to bust open a real front door that they'd heavily reinforced and added the chain for good effect. So they measured the force, then Ray Lewis comes in. This man is fully padded because he's secretly living out every old school linebacker's wildest dream, to measure exactly how hard he can hit. And I remember being shocked when they read off the results. The battering ram came in at 800 pounds of force, but Ray Lewis came in at 1,000 pounds of force. Now this is really more of a hit stick than a bull rush, but please don't get distracted by that minor technicality. The show had a way of taking elite athleticism and putting it in everyday context we understood. Back then, football wasn't treated like a thinking man's game, but sports science came at it from a whole different angle. They did the same thing for basketball, baseball, whatever, which allowed you to appreciate the games on a deeper level. And not just appreciate the games, but appreciate the individuals for the superhumans they really were. Now they wasn't asking all of these life-changing questions, but it exposed the world to a brand new way of looking at sports. But then one day, it just kinda disappeared. I say kinda because from time to time, these clips still pop up. And while it did get some great viewership in this new format, it still lacked the magic that made the original run great. Today we're talking about a show that revolutionized sports TV, but its run was short-lived, at least in its full glory. So let's talk how it started, why it may have ended, and most importantly, why it could be coming back. It's impossible to tell the story of sports science without also telling the story of the guy who created it. This is John Brenkus, a small man with a big heart who was willing to get truck stick all in the name of science. John grew up in a time where, unlike today, if you were into sports but happened to be aggressively average, there was no place for you. You couldn't just start a YouTube channel and reach thousands of people. The best you could probably do was be a coach or a sports agent. But depending on which aspects really drew you into sports, while these jobs can keep you close to the action in some ways, depending on your personality, this might not scratch that itch. As a kid, John played every sport he had access to. Dude was determined to find something he could potentially go pro in. Back in elementary, he was the fastest in the class, but after first grade, dude got stuck in first gear. That started his obsession with measuring athleticism, as he tried to figure out what made his classmates so fast. But over time, he found himself just admiring their speed, and even though he couldn't attain it, he still wanted to test it. His other passion was science of the experimental variety. and later in his life, his two passions would collide. But not before he reached a point that almost everybody watching this video has reached in their lives. That point where your hoop dreams and visions of gridiron glory has to be laid to rest, and you mourn, cause it hurts. But when one dream dies, bro, another one is born. We get so damn caught up in everything we lost, and we miss the opportunity being born right in front of us. But John quickly accepted his place inside the world of athletics, cause running through a bolted door ain't the only way to leave an impact. It didn't seem like it, but the sports world was filled with opportunities. He started running towards his goals, and he ain't stop until he got there. When he was only 21, dude started a production company, same one that eventually launched his Emmy-winning sports show. The production company was John turning lemons to lemonade. He rented out his parents' basement, thus the name, Base Productions. So he formed Base Productions back in 1992, along with his homeboy and his partner, Mickey Stern. At first, they produced some short films and music videos, and if you're a videographer, you know that's how you start. Eventually, they worked their way up to local commercials. Nothing major, but it was key, like important to their development. So when they got their first major break 14 years later, they were seasoned and ready to make the most of the opportunity. So the first big show that was produced by Base Productions, you actually might remember Nat Geo's Fight Science, a show where scientists and martial artists would all work together to analyze the world's best fighting techniques and disciplines. They compared the strongest hits and the deadliest weapons. But it was cool for kids to watch because it was on National Geographic. The show combined two things that appealed to a younger me: well-trained, skillful violence and a who's better debate. Fight Science was a hit, bringing prestige to Base Productions, but John was still running because he hadn't reached his goal. So essentially, Fight Science was the precursor to Sports Science, and only a few months later, Sports Science hit the airwaves. But right away, it kind of had a more personable feeling, thanks to the fact that John hosted the show himself. His energy and enthusiasm for the subject matter was clear. We didn't use these terms back then, but his energy was infectious. Today it's hard to imagine the show without John as the host, but that was actually never part of the original plan. So John never intended for this to be him, out here taking all this unnecessary punishment. But the fact is, if not for a random request, the show might not have been nearly as successful as it was. When he walked in to pitch the show to the execs at FSN, dude was so enthusiastic about the info he was presenting. So one of the execs stopped him in the middle of the presentation and he asked him, "Bro, why don't you host the show?" As you can tell, John's a very positive guy. He just goes with the flow, so of course he agrees to it. So they build out this crazy facility in LA, and it was decked out with all of this cutting edge technology. Here's the crazy part. That was the only leverage they had to get these big time athletes to actually show up. They didn't pay these dudes nothing and they still got everybody. I guess the athletes was as curious about their abilities as we were. When you call Ray Lewis and say, "We think you're as strong as a battering ram, and by the way, we have the tech to test it," a dude like Ray Lewis is gonna hop on a plane simply for the chance to rip some doors off the hinges. People told him he was nuts. They said professional athletes will never show up for a science experiment, but John believed the athletes did it for more than just money. He bet his career on it, and that parlay finally hit. The first season was nominated for an Emmy in 2008. Then season 2 brought even more success. The second season of the show was nominated for 5 Emmys, and these ain't just nominations, they took 2 of them to the crib. The first Emmy they won was for Outstanding Graphic Design, and the second was for Outstanding New Approaches in Sports Programming. That second Emmy almost seems like it was invented for this show. An outstanding new approach? Hell yeah, you damn right. Following the early success, ESPN bought the show, and I don't know what they paid, but I know they paid. From that point, ESPN will own the rights to Sports Science. They retained John as the host because why the hell wouldn't you? But they changed the format from the original couple seasons, which marked the beginning of the end for the show. The show was eventually reduced from its hour-long format into more of these little bite-sized segments. It became a small segment on SportsCenter and other shows, and it was still cool, but I liked it better when it was its own thing. That's my opinion, but they accomplished what they set out to accomplish, as the show reached its all-time high in popularity. But your peak in popularity don't necessarily mean you're at your best in that moment when more people discover you. But John has spoken about the original season still getting tons of views across the world, which I'm taking as a sign that somebody agrees with me. Now, I'm not trying to say that acquisition killed the show. It's complicated because I believe it extended the show's life. The content business is the content business. You can't stay a small, innovative, hidden gem forever. ESPN's idea was to use the show to support their other shows. So for them, a shorter, chopped up format made more sense. More recently, they've done even shorter clips online. And some of those was dope too, like the one on Marshawn Lynch. You know how Beast Mode used to always be on the sideline eating Skittles? They did one to see if his sugar rush helped his performance. They showed his ATP production raised by 35%. And ATP is just a compound that provides your body energy. Due to the ATP increase, his grip strength, reaction time, and lateral movement all slightly increased. That's a fun little question, a cool little experiment. It ties into the game, but it's creative, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes they do more serious topics like the effects of Deflategate. And that's what's dope about the format. They could cover a lot of ground. But more recently, the show pops up infrequently and random. The Beast Mode clip from 5 years ago could be the last true episode, because the most recent ones I came across had really lost any semblance of the magic that they captured in the original run. No in-studio tests, no funny creative premise, and I ain't knocking it, I'm just saying it don't really hit the same. It's probably a lot harder to get the athletes in studio. Maybe today's athletes don't see value in the experiments. And while I do miss a lot of things about the old school athlete, you gotta admit these new cats, they be getting to the money. So maybe they need more motivation than we can show you something cool. And maybe that's the thing that brought the show to its knees. I also don't think ESPN's done a great job of ingratiating themselves with many of today's athletes. In the SportsCenter era, we used to have these commercials that showed the athletes just chilling at ESPN headquarters. Now, obviously, these are only commercials, but it created a little synergy between the players and the network. Maybe not cultivating those relationships today has made it harder to get guys to be willing to show up. Or maybe John Brenkus was the one who lost interest. I could tell you firsthand, when you pour years into something, you go through peaks and valleys and other things tug at your interest. But on that Marshawn Lynch episode, which dropped in 2017, at that point, John Brenkus was still hosting the show. By 2021, he was only doing voiceover. And by 2022, he wasn't even doing that. Interest in those episodes weren't nearly as high. Without the test and without John, that's what made the show great. So it could have been the athletes, or it could have been John. Or maybe ESPN didn't believe in the show as much as they once did. It's still good analysis, but it's just not the same. I mean, the difference in creativity, like, it's not really that close. And here's the thing, I don't know if they can recreate that feeling. Like, we in a different era. Everybody can't go. But with that being said, like, I do have some good news. Last year in late December, John Brenkus tweeted this: "Big announcement coming. Sports Science is returning, but not to ESPN. Stay tuned." In a follow-up interview with Front Office Sports, he elaborated a little, and here's what he had to say. "Look for a new version of Sports Science to return in a big way across several media platforms and various formats. Don't pigeonhole Sports Science in only sport. Think of it more as Sports Science on steroids." Pun very much intended. It'll have a much bigger impact in terms of accessibility, audience, and connections than the previous iterations. There will be many partners. There will not just be one partner. It'll be a conglomeration of significant partnerships. So rather than resting on one platform, it'll rest across a wide variety of major players. And he says because ESPN bought the Sports Science brand, the new version will have a different and more powerful moniker. So we're dealing with a name change, and sounds like a change in scope. Maybe we'll get the full episodes and the shorter clips, which makes sense in 2023 because that's where the video landscape is. That's where it's gone, that's where we're at, and you gotta kind of play the game that way. I'm not against the change, like, you have to evolve things, but it's hard, and I hope they don't stray too far away from the things that made it great. He's expected to make an announcement within the next couple of months to give some added information on how the new Sports Science will look. So the show that once compared Troy Polamalu's reaction time to a single stroke of lightning to see which was faster, they'll once again try to capture that lightning in the bottle until the time comes to release it once more.